I'd love to know from you, how are you kind of employing these traditional lighting techniques, but also with the conveniences of controlled environments and being able to move the sun where you want, move things where you want?
We do try to produce beautiful images beyond probably what you could shoot on a camera. And so the artists do have an eye for color and subtleties at a really fine level, as well as being able to build really clean value structures to frame and compose for the story we're telling, light over dark or dark over light and things like that. And then I think the third part is then really thinking about, or maybe there's one more part after this, but thinking about this as a moving picture. So what are we doing with a light as we're moving? Is it flashing to try to tell a story? Do we re-expose as the camera moves and things such as that? One thing to keep in mind about animation, and Rob kind of alluded to as well, is the things you kind of see in live action, like lens flares and booms on the lens and exposure changes. Those things are all kind of artificially done on top of this, and so the good thing about that is we have artistic control over those things, where you might be struggling with that, or where you can't get a light quite up there, and we can just hide a wall in the CG world. The downside of it is you really have to study that stuff and really watch films to try to replicate those kind of things.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be pretty easy to have it look unnatural because you have so much control to do anything you want. Like, okay, a lot of times we talk to cinematographers and they're saying like, all right, the light is motivated. There's a big window. We have a large giant light source outside the window. And then basically we're just kind of bouncing or just adding a little bit of fill to a face. Are you using similar techniques in animation where you kind of have like your one established light source and then filling in with maybe practicals or bounces and things like that?
I think theoretically, we often think like that there's some kind of motivation for the light. Like you said, there's a window, like I'm being lit. But ultimately, I think that's for the viewer to feel that. But ultimately, just like you had mentioned, we're putting a lot of fills. We're putting a little bit of a rim to pop a head out, or we're going to put a little extra light on the environment to separate the character, or we're going to darken it so they melt away in it, depending on what that story is. So it's the motivated light, I think, is interesting, and trying to sell like this animation world is very believable. But then I think really, a good chunk of the work then is really creating a beautiful image that gets as much as emotion as possible. One thing I would say is we do try to do it as with few lights as possible and try to keep it clean as possible. And the reason for that is, we have to propagate those light rigs to many shots. And the cleaner it is, the better it works across a lot of different camera angles.